Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, across the country. This is the show that is now sweeping the nation the last couple of days. You can call it Cleveland. I call it Believe Land. The chosen one. Not LeBron James. Not Baker Mayfield. Peter Ray and the American Sports History Podcast is the host. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing. 347-205-9631. You can catch the archive version on blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports. Podcast platforms powered now by Mancini Media. And without further ado, let me lay the red carpet down. The podium's there. Here comes the mic. Peter, that city is going to be flying right up there with God right about now. First of all, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? Third of all, you brought the South to the equation today, and I'm really looking forward to this, my friend.
Oh, hi, Mark. I'm doing well. I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, R-E-A. I have a website. It's called Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. And tonight we have a tremendous guest. He is from Flint, Michigan, lives in Woodstock, Georgia. Left his sports fan heart in Michigan. He been a broadcaster for the Atlanta Capitals. Also he's been involved with 1410 AM Talk Radio, and he has a show on Mancini Sports, ATL Prime Sports. A really good guy. Welcome to the show, Todd Quarter.
Hey, how are you today? I'm sure you folks are doing well in Cleveland after beating the Steelers this past weekend.
Yeah, it's funny. We went 18 years without being in the playoffs. That's the long. Yeah, if you look at I became a Browns fan in '72, and they got to the playoffs and gave I was 12. They gave the Dolphins, who were undefeated, won it all, and they gave them a good game, and then they had some tough years. That's when the Steelers, oh my gosh, the mid-'70s Steelers with Terry Bradshaw and all those guys were tough, and Cleveland was kind of weak. Then they were strong. In 1980, they were weak again. Then the late 80s, they were, again, 3 out of 4 years in the AFC title game. Then they declined. Then they left Cleveland, and then we just had, as I said, this long 1802, they got in the playoffs, lost a tough game to the Steelers. They were 10-6 in 2008, but anyway, 18 years and 26 years without. We went 18 years without a playoff game, and now we got two. Now since we won, we have another one coming up. So yeah, folks are happy about being not only in the playoffs, but we're still alive. 8 teams left.
Well, hey, it's an incredible accomplishment. It's been a long time since the Browns have been in the playoffs. They to get in, they had to beat Pittsburgh on the last day of the regular season. They were able to do that, and then, of course, they beat the Steelers 1 week later. It's very difficult to beat a team 2 weeks in a row, and each game was basically an elimination game for the Browns. And you got to give them a lot of credit. Nick Chubb in that running game has really been fantastic for the Browns. They have an opportunity this week against Kansas City, the defending Super Bowl champions. It's going to be a tough task, but going into all these big games, Peter and Mark, to me it always comes down to turnovers. Whoever can not turn the football over and can cause the other team to turn the football over usually comes out on top. And field position and special teams also plays an important role in these huge games. And, for the Browns, they definitely have to win their turnover battle. They are the underdog, and they definitely need to win the field position battle. And also, they're going to have to be extremely effective in the kicking game. Turning over a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes is very hard to do. But they're going to have to do it. That's the way they're going to have to beat Kansas City. Get some great field position on turnovers and not have to drive the length of the field constantly. That to me would be basically the strategy of success for the Browns. I do think the Browns are going to have to be able to run and play action pass. Without a doubt, Nick Chubb, the former University of Georgia running back, is a huge key in this game. He's got to get 100 yards between him and Kareem Hunt. You know, you'd like to see Chubb get 100. He'll get the bulk of the carries. I think for Cleveland to win the game, he's probably got to be in the low 20s carry-wise, and Hunt's got to be somewhere between 7 and 9, somewhere in that area. You'd like to keep Baker Mayfield from not throwing possibly any more than 30 to 32 passes, 35 at the most. You definitely want to spread the field if you're the Browns. You're going to see Kansas City come with that pass rush. So, you know, Cleveland's going to have to take advantage of that by dumping the ball off in the traditional screens to Nick Chubb, who is an excellent receiver out of the backfield. And, you know, they're going to need a huge game from him. They're going to need the huge game from Hooper, Austin Hooper, the former Falcons tight end out of Stanford. And they're going to need a big game out of Jarvis Landry, the wide receiver out of Louisiana State. So, you know, this is a team, you know, that offensively has it. Of course, to me, in these playoffs, another thing it comes down to is the defense. Who's going to step up and get after Patrick Mahomes? If he's got time to throw, it's over. He's a great quarterback in the pocket, and he's a great quarterback out of the pocket. But I think you've got to force him out of the pocket and make him comfortable. And you may not get to him, but you've at least got to be able to hit him. And you've got to get him off the mark. And also, you're going to have to double team. You're going to have to double team their great wide receivers. I mean, you're going to have to double team somebody. You're either going to have to double team Kelsey, or you're going to have to double team their star wide receiver. And you know, you're going to pick your poison there. You know, Kelsey, you're going to have to single up because you just can't leave. He's the best tight end of the game right now, but you also can't leave Tyreek Hill open. There's just no way. You know, he went to West Alabama, and, you know, the guy had, 87 receptions this year for 15 touchdowns, about 15 yards a catch. So, you know, Kelsey, had about 105 receptions this season. I mean, you're going to have to pick your poison. Maybe you can double them both, but if you do that, you know, you're going to leave Hardman and Robinson and Watkins open, and, you know, they'll do damage there. So the thing is to try to be able to take Kelsey and Hill out of the game as much as possible. And Stefanski will be coaching this week. And, you know, when I think about the Browns in last week's game, Peter, they did such a great job without Kevin Stefanski, who is not only the head coach, but he's the play caller. And for Van Pelt, you know, to call the plays for the Browns and do such a, you know, special job, a great job for the Browns. I believe Van Pelt is a native of Cleveland, so that really had to be really special for him. You know, you had a chance to impact your hometown team in an historic win. I mean, like I said, they had to beat Pittsburgh not once but twice. Once to get in the home game the prior week before, and to go into Pittsburgh and finally beat them after 18 seasons in the first round of the playoffs. To me, it's tremendous credit for the Browns. And, you know, Stefanski's on track to returning this week. To me, that's huge. And one thing to note, too, from the Browns, Peter, is, they won their first playoff game since '94. You know, and like I said, they did it without Stefanski because he had COVID. and to be able to do it on the road, to win the last time they won in Pittsburgh was 18 years ago. So just a tremendous achievement all the way around. Nobody was picking the Browns. They were missing their top corner. They were missing two guys on the defensive line. They were missing one of their offensive linemen. And here's the bottom line also. They had very, very little practice time, Peter, because of COVID. They had to practice virtually. No way did I think they were going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when you get up 28-0, and by the way, that was historic. That was the most points in a quarter for a playoff team in NFL history in the first quarter. 28 points. And, there were a couple of stages of the game, Peter, when it was 28-3, and then it was 35-10, and I'm going, okay, I know a team that blew these big leads in the Super Bowl. 28-3 with 17 minutes left. Oh, yeah, I live here. That would be the Atlanta Falcons. So you were thinking as a Browns fan, you do not want the Atlanta Falcons moment. And they did get within 11, did Pittsburgh. They never quit. You got to give them a lot of credit. They forced 4 interceptions from Roethlisberger. Yes, a couple of them were tipped, so it wasn't Ben's fault. But, those interceptions, like I said, caused great field position. And when you can do that as an underdog, you can flip the field and flip the script and won the game. And that's what the Browns did. And I give them a lot of credit. And, it's too bad the game wasn't in Cleveland. They'd have a lot of fans in the stands. But it is in Kansas City, so they'll have fans in the stands. But they'll be for the Chiefs. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if you saw some fans from the Dog Pound make their way west out to the Midwest in Kansas City and make the game on this weekend. Peter, you must be flying high with that win.
Yeah, it's great. I over the years as a fan, we're it's a bad business we're in as fans because only one team can win the championship, and you got 8 teams left. 7 are going to be disappointed. And the thing is, the higher you go, the worse it gets when you lose, unless you win at all. And but you with time you learn to going into games. In fact, I generally hate the playoffs because of the stress involved, because it's going to hurt. If you lose, and you can't lose. We all know one team's going to lose. So, but it's it's okay. Whatever happens is okay. Because I've had the Indians in '97 who had the lead in Game 7 of the World Series, and then in 2016 we also lost a 7-game series. But the thing is, it's whatever happens is fine. And I've often sometimes I think I wish I hadn't become a sports fan, because you can't. What can you do? You can't. You can't impact. You're sort of helpless. And I went to bed. I get up at 5 a.m, and I thought I'd like to get enough sleep tonight. And I went to bed at halftime, but after I listened on the radio in bed, and I was just like, oh, you got this terrible. You're listening to the Steelers make their comeback, and when you have you got a big lead, and then you got these 3 and outs where you use like 20 seconds on the clock because you got incomplete passes or whatever, and then the other team scores quick. Another time, it's like, oh my God, this is horrible. and I was rooting hard for the Falcons because I like to. They'd never won a title. A Super Bowl or an NFL title, and that was just sickening. And so I really feel for Falcons fans, and like I said, the Bills losing 4 Super Bowls, and I think what the Falcons went through, losing that, it was the most painful thing in sports, because you got to live with it, right? And it's very, very painful. But if you don't mind, Todd, I'd like to shift gears here. You're from Michigan, and to be honest, I'm not don't know a lot about current sports, but my mind is sort of, I tend to think of the 70s a lot. In fact, the Detroit Tigers in the 70s. Because for some reason, I had a lot of Tigers baseball cards, which I've looked at from the '70s. I looked at a lot, and we had Willie Horton in Cleveland, so I want to throw out some names. Tom Verizon, who was a big prospect. Aurelio Rodriguez. I remember when the Yankees signed him as a tremendous third baseman. Norm Cash, terrible trade from Cleveland. Denny McLain, last 30-game winner. You never hear anybody talk about that anymore, because hell, I think that's never going to happen unless there's a major change in pitching strategy. And all these guys, Gates Brown, Bill Freehand, and John Watkins just died, I think, this past year. So that name is all these fellows from the Al Kaline, Mickey Stanley, John Hiller. So you want to talk about the 70s Tigers?
Well, I have more memories of the 80s, but I do have some memories of the 70s, the late 70s in particular. When Lou Whitaker and Sweet Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell came up, the Tigers got Kirk Gibson. He played football and basketball at Michigan State, and a lot of folks thought that Kirk Gibson was going to play professional football, but he chose baseball instead. Ended up being a fantastic decision for him. He won 2 World Series, one in '84 with Detroit, and the one in '88, which was Tommy Lasorda's last World Series win. He just passed away not long ago. The Dodgers. But, Alan Trammell's in the Hall of Fame. I think Lou Whitaker belongs there. They're the only shortstop, second base tandem that played 19 years together. Detroit never had to look for a double play combination like that for 20 years. That's unheard of. That'll never happen again, especially with today's free agency. And, Sparky Anderson came over in '79. And he said to the fans in Detroit, in 5 years, we'll win the whole cotton picking thing. And you know what? 5 years later, damn it, they won the whole thing. So, as you know, Sparky in the 70s, they won it with a big red machine in '75 and '76. And I tell you what, that '75 club was probably as good as any club in baseball history. In the '76 club, they swept the Yankees the next year. So, but to me, the special years, because I'm a Reds fan in the National League and Detroit in the American League, and that '75 club, went 7 games, and then it was the base hit there by Joe Morgan, who always had that funny batting stance where he'd take his elbow and flop it up and down before he'd swing, hit the baseball, and he got the game-winning base hit, and it held up, and the Reds won 4-3 in 7 games against a fantastic, historic, great Boston Red Sox team led by Carlton Fisk and Freddie Lynn and Louis Tiant and golly, I mean, that historic home run that Carlton Fisk hit in '76, waving at it to stay fair, and it was, and I remember seeing those games when I was a kid. That's when I started catching on to baseball, mid-'70s, maybe just slightly before. So, but those Tiger teams in the '70s, Billy Martin, they were competitive. Then they went through a rough stretch, and then they hired Sparky. But, also, I was only 4 in '68, but that '68 club for Detroit was a tremendous baseball team. They won over 100 games back then, Peter. As you know, only 2 teams make the playoffs. The best record in the American League and the best record in the National League before they began division play in '69. So, I remember I had a guest on, Jake Wood, who, he was on the '61 Tigers. That was his season debut. He was one of the leaders in the American League back then in triples, I believe, or stolen bases. Don't quote me. I'd have to look it up. I had him on this summer on a segment of one-on-one on my show, ATL Prime Sports, and Jake Wood played with Al Kaline, Norm Cash, and et cetera. And you mentioned some other names. And, that Tigers ball club in 61, they won over 100 games, and they didn't make the playoffs because, the Yankees were they're all in the same league, in the American League. The Yankees won over, they beat them out by a couple of games, and they ended up going to the playoffs, and the Yankees won the World Series. But it wasn't for New York. Detroit would have won it in 61. They definitely were the second best team in all of baseball when you go back and take a look at the film. But, when I have more fond memories, it would be of the 84 Tigers. I know that lineup today. I know all 9 starters. You mentioned a few of them. Parrish at catch. Bergman split time with Darrell Evans. Darrell Evans played a lot of DH. You had Whitaker at second, Trammell at third, Trammell at short, Tom Brookings at third. Left field, you had Larry Herndon, who actually made the final out in the catch in the 84 World Series with a fly ball to left field. You had Chet Lemon in center, and you had Kirk Gibson in right. The rotation consisted of Jack Morris, obviously, Milt Wilcox, Dan Petrie, and, of course, they had Senior Smoke, Willie Hernandez, closing it out. And that 35-5 start, that'll be never duplicated again neither, I don't think. That right there pretty much, as Sparky said in 84, if we don't win this thing, because Boston got within, 10 games and got within some single digits, and they were climbing up there. They had swept the Tigers that year in Boston in a 4-game series. And Sparky said, man, if we don't win this thing, they're going to hang me with that big famous flagpole they had out there in center field. So, that 84 season, they got to the playoffs. They swept Kansas City in 3 games because back then, each championship game series was only a best of 5. And in the World Series, they beat San Diego in 5. Of course, the famous Kirk Gibson home run to put it away. Trammell was the MVP of the series. And I remember a utility player for San Diego named Kurt Bovacca, who did some damage in that World Series and made it interesting for the Padres, who had Steve Garvey, the former Dodger, on the roster. Steve Garvey played baseball at Michigan State. And that was the year that the Cubs should have been in the World Series. They were up 2-0, and they lost 3 straight to San Diego. So, those are all fond memories. Today, the game of baseball is much different, Peter. It's much differently played than back then. Back then, you had the sacrifice, the stolen base, the hit and run. You don't get a lot of that today. Today's game is the walk, the home run, or a strikeout. They've got to change the rules to, I don't mean to jump on here, but change subjects, but they need to change the rules in baseball to get the ball to be put in play more. Players need to choke up on the bat more. I know they're bigger, stronger, and faster. If that's the case, move out the fences, take the mound back down to pre-1969. They raised the mound in 69. The last time it was really high was 68. Raise that, mound back up to 1968. Move the fences back and get rid of the shift and, start making, change the way that the game is played. And the team that does that, I think, in Major League Baseball, that goes back to the stolen base and the hit and run, and mixes it in with a home run, will be really successful. Today's game is more of a bullpen game from a pitching standpoint. Once they get over 100 pitches, there's a fire alarm that comes out of the dugout, and you would think there was a fire. The manager's running out with a hose, taking the pitcher out because he's at 100 pitches. So could you imagine telling Bob Gibson to come out after 100 pitches back in the day? There's just no way. He'd probably kill the manager.
Yeah, the Kurt Bavacqua, the 84 Padres who won the bubblegum blowing contest. That was fun. And on the Tigers, Darrell Evans, who with Atlanta, Henry Aaron, and Davey Johnson, who only three teammates that hit 40 home runs. I think it was in '73, and we actually
for the Braves, correct?
For the Braves, yeah, and then. Yeah. We actually had Jack Morris at the end of his career. He had a good, I think it was 95 maybe around that, and he had a pretty good record, but a very high ERA, and I think he decided to retire. And we had Milt Wilcox earlier before, and then Johnny Grubb, and when Lance Parrish, I think at the very end of his career, didn't play very much. But I'll never forget the '85. I remember I believe Tigers started 5-0 and Cleveland started 0-5, and I thought, oh my God, 5 games into the season, we're 5 games out of first, and so that was just that'll be one of the most memorable teams of all time. The '84 Tigers. Now time's flying here. Would you like to talk a little bit about the late '80s 2 titles, Detroit Pistons with Isaiah Thomas, Dennis Rodman, guys like that? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, the Bad Boys, the Pistons had one heck of a decade there in the '80s. Won 2 championships and should have been 3 if it wasn't for a phantom foul on Bill Laimbeer when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was making a hook shot. The Pistons would have won it 3 in a row, but then again, the Lakers fans will, argue the next year that they lost Magic Johnson for the remainder of the series when Detroit finally broke through in '89 to sweep them and win it all. And I tell you what, those Pistons, man, they had a lot of heartbreaks along the way to win it. The game in the Boston Garden when Isaiah Thomas threw an errant pass, and it was intended for Joe Dumars, and Larry Bird swept in there and stole it and made a miraculous pass to Dennis Johnson, and he laid it off the glass softly, and Boston stole Game 5 in the Garden. It was 2 games apiece. Had the Pistons won that year, they could have won all, but they won Game 6, and then in Game 7 they lost, and then that was in '87. Then in '88 the Pistons finally got through, and I went to Game 5 of the NBA Finals that year, and there was 70,000 fans in the Silverdome packed for a basketball game. And I remember how I got my ticket. I'll never forget it. I stopped by an Amoco gas station. I filled it up, and you know what? Once I filled it up for $10, you could get a seat up in the cheap seats in the Silverdome. And the guy, the gas attendant, you went inside. He gave you the $10 NBA Finals ticket against Magic and the Lakers. And as someone who was about 24 years old then, that was a lot of fun. That was something to do when I got out of work. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Pistons years. I'm not as much of a pro basketball fan anymore for a lot of reasons. But back then, the NBA was fantastic. The game has changed a lot today. Too much three-pointers, and I think they need to move the three-point line back even further.
Yeah, it's funny, this stuff takes you back. The Cavs in the late '80s put together a strong team, and were rival. Mark Price, guys like not Nate Thurman, Brad Daugherty, Hot Rod. Yeah, Larry, and we have Larry Nance Jr. back, or the son of Larry Nance now with Cleveland. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, those the Pistons teams, and I have a friend who has a friend who said, oh, he was so bitter because then you had the Michael Jordan team that you win. The thing about winning championships, it's like a drug. I haven't experienced it only once in 2016, but it's just so intoxicating, and you never. That's why these Yankee fans you never have enough. You want it, and so for Pistons fans, they had those two, and then all of a sudden it's over, and the Bulls are just completely dominant. We are running out of time. Our guest has been Todd Corder, who has ATL Prime Sports show on the Mark Mancini Network. Todd, do you have any final words for our audience?
Well, I just want to say thanks for inviting me on. We do have the show twice a week. Our next show will be this Friday at 1 to 2:30, I believe. Mark changed the time on me this week. I'll have to look at it, but I believe it was 1:30 to 2:30. You can listen live at www.blogtalkradio.com or 1-347-205-9631. And then also we have a tape delayed show on Monday. It comes out live on YouTube TV on Tuesday afternoon with that. So, I really appreciate you having me on. I think you're about out of time here.
Yeah, it's been wonderful having you on the show, Mr. Todd Corder. You know, we're from a similar era, about 4 years apart in age, and so it's fun talking with these shared memories, you know, from when we were young, you know, and
sure,
that's
and I like these games. I do. The Indians, they've had some really good teams recently, and we'll see if they can still contend after trading Francisco Lindor over to the Mets. So,
the thing Lindor. They had to do it, and I'm sure they got some good young players. So that's how it is. It's the funny thing about I seem to have more interest in the past in terms of teams because it's already set and there's no stress involved. You know, with the present, especially now in the playoffs. Although I'm getting older, it doesn't hurt as bad if they, you know, when they lose, unless they do win the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens. Again, thank you so much, Todd Corder, for being on the show tonight. Really good guy and very knowledgeable about sports past and present. Next week, our guest will be Jesse Meza, not Jose Mesa, the former Cleveland MLB closer. Jesse Meza at Philadelphia Sports, Liberty Bell Smack. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thanks again, Todd. Good night, everybody.